right? So what happens when you start kind of getting a lot of half-ass PhDs in the academic world who need something to do? You think they're going to do the hard thing versus the easy thing? Everybody who did, I mean, I majored in math. I'm going to be my little elitist, dorky thing here. Everybody who majored in something hard watched people bounce off of their hard major into the easier majors, and so they could still just get a degree. So you start, they call this overproduction, cultural overproduction or cultural elite overproduction. You start putting too many people into degree programs that they're not, they're not going to graduate with an engineering degree. It's freaking hard. And so what they end up doing is they get these degrees in things that are easy. Well, complaining is easy. Tearing down is easy. Building up is hard. So there's this bias that's happened over the last 100 years in academia toward this easier thing, criticism, and away from the harder thing, which is understanding and developing, fundamental research and so on. And it's basically taken over academia now. And that's how I think that's actually a lot of how we got here, is it the easy thing is the easy thing and complaining is cheap. My best friend in college was, he was going to be a mechanical engineer, and then calculus just took care of that. He was not going to be a mechanical engineer anymore because he couldn't pass calculus. So but he did graduate college with another degree. So there is this kind of chopping down to easier degrees.
Right.
But as far as this anti-intellectualism trend that I was describing, this actually did, it was recognized along the way. So there's this, one of the guys in the Frankfurt School's name was Herbert Marcuse. This is the guy who laid out the idea of repressive tolerance, that you have to violently fight against ideas that might cause intolerance to rise up. He did that in 1965. What happened in 1967 and 1968? Riots following his ideas exactly. And so Marcuse was on TV in 77, right before he died. He died, I think, in the early 80s or late 70s. And he complained about his own movement that he started that had got completely anti-intellectual. They weren't doing the hard work. They weren't doing the right stuff. They were just doing the easy stuff. And he actually complained on TV that this had happened, that there had been a sliding away from the serious work and toward the easier complaining stuff. So we wrote 20 fake academic papers in these exact fields: critical race theory,
so we should tell
studies.
Peter Boghossian did it with you, and
Helen Pluckrose.
Pluckrose.
Yeah, Pluckrose.
Pluckrose.
Yeah, the second most English name
and she
ever.
She wrote Cynical Theories with you.
Yeah. So
that's a very English name.
It is a very English name. So we wrote these papers to try to show that this scholarship is bogus.
Right.
And so we spent just under a year writing crazy stuff.
Please tell people the dog park one.
You love them. So the dog park paper was actually, I think, kind of the masterpiece of the thing. So we wrote this paper where we claimed that we were a feminist researcher who spent 1,000 hours in Portland, Oregon dog parks over the course of 1 year. Never in the heavy rain. We put that in the paper, never in the heavy rain, like that's some relevant detail or something. So 1,000 hours over a year is already ridiculous. That's 6 hours a day, every day.
That's so much time.
I know. And what we said she did was she watched dog humping incidents and tried to determine when they counted as dog rapes and when they didn't.
What's the name of the paper, though?
Queer Performativity in Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon. Rape Culture and Queer Performativity. That's what it was. Rape Culture. Yeah. So we had we said that she watched these dog fights and dog rapes and all this stuff, and we put this crazy stuff in there, like sometimes they try to break up a dog fight by doing jumping jacks by the dog or singing songs, and just ridiculous. And the dogs were pooping on each other. We put that in the paper. And then we said when there was a dog humping, that she would go up and she would inspect the dog's genitals, and she inspected 10,000 dogs' genitals and then interrogated the owners about their sexual orientations. And what she wanted to find out was if straight men would discourage gay dog humping versus straight dog humping, and that it was different for women and gay men. And then we said we're going to pass that data through black feminist criminology, which makes no sense. And then we said that the conclusion was that dog parks are petri dishes of canine rape culture, and that they are rape condoning spaces just like human nightclubs. So human nightclubs are automatically now rape condoning spaces. And so the conclusion was that we now have to train men the way that we train dogs, with leashes and shock collars and things, in order to get rape culture to go away. And they give this an award. The journal is the #1 feminist geography journal in the world. And there was their 25th anniversary
What's
edition.
the name of the journal?
Gender, Place, and Culture. And it's the leading feminist geography journal in the world. And they had their 25th year, so they're on their 25th anniversary. And so what they wanted to do was highlight one paper per issue the entire year as being exemplary scholarship in feminist geography. And ours was chosen. I can tell you, man, it was the craziest thing ever. I remember, I'm almost positive it was May 7th, 2018. I got the email. And it's like, I can remember. It's just like, go in the house. I was out doing like yard work or something, and I come in, and I check my email. And I just remember like gaping at the screen. I'm like, this can't be happening. Because I just saw the editor, and I'm like, oh no, they figured it out, right? And we're going to give it an award. And so I grab, because we're making a documentary about it, right? So we got a filmmaker, Mike Nana. He's the one that did that 3-part documentary of Evergreen that showed everybody how. I mean, that's where everybody's evergreen now. And so Mike, it was like, anything that happens, film it. So I grabbed my GoPro, and I have this footage, and it's like sideways because I didn't even like think about it. And I'm just like running outside trying to find my wife. I'm like, you aren't going to believe this. You aren't going to believe this. Oh my gosh, it was a really freaking crazy, like it's almost like the world slid off of its foundation a little bit when they gave that paper an award for me. It was just so weird.
It just shows that there's such a high tolerance for bullshit.
That's right.
In those air quotes disciplines.
Right. And those air quotes disciplines are now being like mainlined into like every university, every school, every corporate boardroom.
How did that happen?
I mean, we were talking about, the raising the frequency thing when these events happen. But mostly it's that they took over our colleges of education about 1980. And so they've been slowly turning teachers to the project. And then in 2002 and 2003, there were a couple of Supreme Court cases that were talking about affirmative action. And they said that if you want to do affirmative action, you can do it if it increases diversity and equity and inclusion. So they started to build these offices in the university. And those university offices started to like dictate what you could and couldn't say. You could get in trouble or brought up to hearings. Even if the hearing finds you innocent, you still had to waste your time going through this humiliating hearing. And
self-censorship.
Exactly.
Out of fear.
Silencing people, getting them to silence themselves, actually. And so then they take that lack of criticism, and then they can just go crazy with their stuff. It's like critical race theory specifically. People email me all the time and they say, where are the scholarly criticisms of critical race theory? And I actually write back, I'm like, you're not allowed to do that. Like the most recent ones in law journals, like substantive ones, are from the 1990s. So there's nobody criticizing this stuff.
Oh, wow.
So when you aren't criticizing it, I mean, scholarship depends on people shooting down your bad ideas. And you can't criticize it. Why? Because if you criticize critical race theory, you must be a racist.
Now, what was the response to you guys getting an award for that once you revealed that this was all horseshit?
Oh, she wasn't happy. The editor of that journal was not happy. She felt like betrayed, like,
Well, she was.
She was. But she felt, like I had been so nice. I was so kind to her, and she was very kind to me. She was a very nice person. Most of these people, that's very important. But these aren't mostly nice people. There are some hustlers, and they take advantage of that situation. It's like they've kind of gone into this mass delusion where everything's power dynamics, and the power dynamics define how everybody experiences life. And
do you remember when Jordan Peterson was on television on the CBC and he was talking to some professor, I think may or may not have been transgender, who was saying that there is no such thing as biological sex? And I can unpack that for you if you'd like, and then keeps going as if it's just like you made a statement that there's no such thing as biological sex. Like,
right. Yeah, that's got a pedigree in the academic literature going back to actually at least the early 1990s.
I had an argument with a professor about it on the show. It was like, there's no difference between males and females. I go, so if you buy a male puppy and they give you a female, do you complain? What happens to that? It was a he. He didn't know what to say.
Okay.
He was just... You could tell when he was saying the things he was saying that he was knowing that he was going to get support from the people that he works with. I have a friend who works at a very large newspaper, and they said they can't say that there are two genders. Like if you say there are two genders, you will literally get thrown out of the office. And they're like, we're not exaggerating this.
I mean, yeah, imagine that. I have a friend that works in journalism who's gay and has a gay sensitivity reader to make sure that his writing is gay sensitive enough.
He's gay.
He's gay.
and he has a gay sensitivity reader.
To make sure his writing is gay enough.
Can he just check with himself?
You would think so.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You would think so. There's this weird language thing happening there with all these like he called it desensitizing or sterilizing language, and that's what's happening. So it takes all that meaning away, right?
Yeah.
So nobody knows what it means except for the guy preaching it. So the guy doing the diversity training, I watched a diversity training somebody sent me from their job the other day, and this woman's like just droning on. It felt like you're just getting, you imagine you're at the job, like you have to do this for work. You don't want to do it. And you're just watching this webinar, and this lady's just ramrodding like 12-syllable words at you. She's like, okay, so we have to talk about microaggressions, and there are different kinds of microaggressions. There are microassaults. And it's just like, what the hell is this?
Microassaults.
Micro insults, and then micro.
What's a microassault?
A microassault is when you do it on purpose.
But what is a microassault?
So a microassault would be, making a small but racially salient comment in the presence of a person of that race.
Oh, so it's not even
not necessarily
racist.
Assault. No, it's not an assault. No, these people. Violence is all words and discursive.
So a
aggression.
micro assault can just be an insult.
And they're all insults. Micro everything has to just be like words or standing in the wrong place.
Oh boy, Jamie just pulled it up here. A microassault is an explicit racial derogations characterized. What is that? How? Look at that expression. A microassault is an explicit racial derogations.
So you've put somebody down on purpose.
I know, but that's a weird way of describing an explicit racial derogations, plural.
Oh yeah,
who wrote which is that? Singular.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah,
they need an editor.
Derogations, plural, characterized primarily by verbal or nonverbal attack, meant to hurt the intended victim through name calling. There's your hyphen. Avoidant behavior or purposeful discriminatory actions.
Yeah, the grammar on that's broken all to pieces.
It's a mess. And that's kzoo.edu, reason.kzoo.edu.
Nice. I mean, it's like all
they
these...
didn't even bother editing that motherfucker. Look at that.
There's so many of these things that are like for education that are like this. Oh. And it's like they say stuff like themself. And it's just like, this is supposed to be for education. It's barely literate. What is going on?
Well, that's a problem when you're using they and them as well, right? You start using they and them pronouns, which are really supposed to, for the most part, indicate multiple people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The singular
you could say, they. So this guy, what you could say, they thought they would get away with it. You could say it. You could say.
Right.
But it's hard to use it that way all the time.
Right. It's hard to use it intentionally,
yes.
Actually. It comes up naturally sometimes, and then that's fine, but it's hard to use intentionally.
Yeah. If a person wanted to go to the store, they could go.
Right. And so there's something like kind of totalitarian about making people do things like that are difficult, like jumping through these little hoops and then holding them to massive account.
Yes.
And it's like, even like the Black Lives Matter thing, like Black Lives Matter as a sentence is obvious. Forcing somebody to say an obvious thing.
That's a great name because you can't argue with it.
You also can't argue with it. Yeah, because what are you going to say?
Matter.
And of course, it's so complicated because it's like if somebody asked me, they said, okay, do you support Black Lives Matter? James, do you support Black Lives Matter? And of course, they're going to try to catch me on this. And it's like, which one?